Well, welcome to a special edition of Good Business. I'm your host, Clay Vaughn, and I'm dropping this episode outside of our normal schedule just because of the urgency of the topic at hand. So the reason for this special edition is that AI is developing at an unprecedented rate, and it's imperative that leaders from every organization and business are aware of its benefits and risks. In light of the recent letter from over 1,000 tech elites from around the world, including Steve Wozniak, Apple's co-founder, and Elon Musk, calling for a 6-month pause on AI development, this episode is more critical than ever before. The impact on AI on the workforce and censorship is one that literally cannot be ignored. It's essential that we understand AI's current state, frankly, what it is, its potential, and its limitations. That's why I'm excited to have Peter Voss with us today, the founder of AIGO.ai, also known as AIGO, a company that focuses on creating intelligent conversational agents that can learn, reason, and converse like humans. With decades of experience in the field, Peter is a recognized expert in artificial intelligence, and his company's conversational agents are changing the way businesses interact with their customers. So Peter's views on the current state of AI development and where it's headed are sure to give us some valuable insights into this rapidly evolving field and who is behind that development. Guys, y'all do not want to miss this. So it appears there may already be a chatbot more powerful than ChatGPT that simply has not made it to the full market yet today. So without further ado, let's dive in and explore the future of AI with Peter Voss. Well, I'm your host, Clay Vaughn, and I'm best known as the CEO of Good Agency, a full-service marketing agency and production company that helps you market your business and share your story. Now, before we get going with this week's episode, I want to drop a quick note to any business owners listening in. Our show is sponsored by Rocket Fuel CRM, and you should head right over to www.rocketfuel.software so you can learn about the CRM I'm recommending to every small and medium-sized business. As of 2020, there were well over 10,000 web tools and apps designed for businesses like yours, and the problem is you can't afford to spend the time and money learning each one. Rocket Fuel CRM combines nearly every marketing tool out there into one unique system. So check it out at www.rocketfuel.software. You can try it risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee today. Alrighty, let's dive right on into this week's episode of Good Business. All right, well, welcome back. I've got Peter Voss today. And many of you may not know who Peter is, but after this podcast, you're going to be saying, why did I not know who Peter Voss was? So, Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, Peter, as I mentioned to you before we got rolling today, I had a chance to dig into your background, and obviously AI is one of the biggest hot button topics to talk about in the modern era. Even just 2 weeks ago, one of my guests was talking about AI, but we were talking about it more in the concept of marketing and application.
Mm-hmm.
But Peter, you've got so much knowledge and history and experience in research tied to this. I'd love to just dive right on in and ask you the big question, which is, what is AI?
Okay. So the term AI was coined some 60 odd years ago, and it was really about building machines that can think, learn, and reason the way humans do. Now, 60 years ago, the people who coined the term thought they could solve this problem, in a year or two. And of course, it turned out to be much, much harder. So what happened over the decades, this dream sort of really morphed into something that's better described as narrow AI. And what I mean by that is, instead of trying to build a machine that can learn and reason like humans, you try and pick one problem at a time and figure out how the computer can solve that. So a very obvious example is playing chess. Sometime in the 80s, I think IBM came up with Deep Blue that beat the world chess champion. But that's the only thing it could do. It couldn't even play checkers. It couldn't do anything else at all. So that's really been the history of AI, that people have picked one particular thing, image recognition or speech recognition or container optimization or whatever it might be. And then it's really the human ingenuity that solved the problem in writing a program that could, solve the problem. So in a way, AI lost its way. So in 2002, I got together with a few other people and we felt that time was ripe for us to go and pursue the original dream of AI, to build thinking machines. So we coined the term artificial general intelligence, AGI, three of us, and wrote a book on the topic to basically say that's really what we need. We don't want to, spend our time just solving one problem at a time. We want to build a system that can learn to do all of these things the way a human would. And that's really what, what the term AGI is actually really taken off, that a lot of people talk about that now. And it really means, human-like ability. And with, ChatGPT, all of the noise we're hearing about what it can do, people are now saying, wow, okay, we may actually be getting to a point where we have this kind of human level reasoning and learning ability that we're getting really close to it. So, that's kind of a quick history of AI and how it really turned into narrow AI, and the term AGI really captures the original dream and vision of AI.
Wow. Thank you for that background. I think for everyone tuning in today, that's really helpful, because most people, when they hear AI, they think of something out of Hollywood or they think of ChatGPT. There's not really anything in between. So Peter, I'd love to, before I dive into your background, which I'm just thrilled to hear more about, I'd love to ask you one question tied to this, which is, I think, what we're all nervously excited about, but also a little bit concerned about too, which is what is the problem that you see after studying this? What is the problem that you see that needs to be overcome, that you have been working towards overcoming when it comes to AI?
So the current approach to AI with ChatGPT and similar approaches is that it's inherently a statistical approach. These systems are trained with many billions of words, in fact trillions in some cases. So they have massive amounts of data that they are fed, examples, just basically everything on the internet or books and so on. Now, once the model is built, it can't really learn anything new. And that's a very fundamental flaw, a very fundamental limitation. It can learn some things, but not really, it can't. It really requires this massive training effort to get it to do these impressive things that it does. And I spent quite a lot of time studying just what intelligence is and what intelligence entails. And I can give a very practical example. If you hired an assistant and they couldn't learn new things, they might know a lot of things, but they couldn't learn new things, they wouldn't be terribly useful. They may be new skills that they need to acquire or do some research and, do something, or you just tell them that, this is the way I'd like to have things done. And, so being able to learn rapidly without massive amounts of, data and examples is really a key requirement of AI. Another huge problem with these models is that they confabulate, they make up stuff. So they are not reliable. Their knowledge is not reliable. They can make up stuff that sounds totally plausible. You can try this in GPT and ask for a bio of yourself, and it'll probably tell you things that are completely wrong about you. There's so many.
Yeah, I've tried it.
Yeah, there's so many examples that basically just make up stuff, and it sounds very plausible. They can They can even give you fake references. I asked them what articles I've written, and I got these very authoritative sounding descriptions of articles I've written, complete with a link, completely bogus, you know.
Wow.
So they don't have the ability to sort of really check their own knowledge, and they can't think about what they're saying. They just say that. So the inability to be able to learn interactively and accumulate new knowledge, the fact that they can't really check and think about what they're saying, what they're doing. It's just like they're an automatic pilot just spewing out stuff that sounds all very plausible. And a lot of it is true, but a lot of it just isn't true. And they don't have a way of reasoning about, so the lack of reasoning. I think those are two things. The third one, that's a huge problem, is that they are black boxes. They are completely opaque. You can't really determine how they came to a certain conclusion. If you ask them a question, they give you an answer. It's just a black box. It's just a statistical model, and you can't determine, how did they come to that conclusion. And that's quite a problem. That if they give you the wrong answer, the only remedy you really have is to throw more training data at it until it gives you the right answer. But then what else broke? And this is called, technically it's called catastrophic forgetting, that these systems are prone to, that as you teach them new things, they may forget or change information that used to be correct. So there are these very substantial problems with them that need to be overcome. And I firmly believe that there's really a fundamentally different approach that needs to be taken. Instead of a statistical system with massive amounts of data, you need a cognitive system, a system that's inherently designed to meet the requirements of intelligence, such as interactive learning and being able to think about things and knowing what you think of, what the system thinks about. And that's what we've been working on, for the last 20 years.
Wow. Well, that actually is a perfect segue into, all right, Peter, what have you been working on? What's your story? And tell me about AIGO. Tell me about what you've got going on. I'm so excited to hear about this.
Yes, certainly. So I'll just give a little bit of background. I started out working as an electronics engineer, started my own company doing industrial electronics. And then I fell in love with software and programming. It was just fantastic. It's just so creative and stimulating and great. So my company turned into a software company. I developed an ERP, basically a very comprehensive accounting system. And the company went very quickly from myself in the garage to 400 people. We did an IPO. So that was super exciting.
Wow.
And it's when I exited this company, is I had enough time on my hands to say, well, what big project do I want to tackle? And the thing that struck me is that software really is quite dumb. It doesn't have common sense. It doesn't reason. So if the programmer doesn't think of something, it'll just throw an error or give you, crazy answer. So how can we solve that problem? So I took off 5 years to study all different aspects of intelligence, how children learn, how our intelligence differs from animals, and really even the most fundamental questions in philosophy and epistemology, theory of knowledge. How do we know anything? What is reality? How can we be certain of things? So really the very fundamentals of intelligence and knowledge. And of course, I also studied the work that had already been done in the field of AI. And that culminated in me coming up with a design for a thinking engine, an AGI engine. And so that company I launched in 2001. We spent quite a number of years just building various prototypes, doing R&D and so on, with about 10 people. And then in 2008, we had come to a point we'd actually developed a product, a call automation system. When you call into a company and you talk to a robot, and whenever I say that to people, they say, yeah, I hate these things, always press zero to get to an operator. Well, I say, you'll hate ours a lot less. because they have intelligence. So they're actually pretty good because they remember what you said earlier. They have some degree of reasoning and so on. So that company was launched in 2008 and became quite successful, about 100 people now. But just due to circumstances with the investors I ended up having and so on, they weren't really keen for us to put a lot of effort into ongoing development. So we sold the company, and I went back to another round of assembled a brand new team, and we spent another couple of years just increasing the intelligence, working on the fundamentals of the system. And then we launched, this is AIGO.ai, my current company. And about 4 years ago, we launched a commercial product, which is a chatbot with a brain. So, the first company was focused on voice interaction. Our current company is focused on text interaction because that's becoming more and more common, but we also do voice. So it's really automating call centers is the the main thrust of it, but our product is really application agnostic and industry agnostic. So, for example, you could use our conversational AI technology as diabetes coach, for example. Somebody has diabetes and they want a personal coach, a personal assistant that can help them with nutrition and lifestyle changes and so on. Or a salesperson who wants an assistant, a personal assistant to help them, manage all their prospects and so on. So it can be deployed either sort of at the call center level or contact center level, or for the individual to have an assistant. And so that's what our company is about, chatbot with a brain.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So when you say chatbot with a brain, I'd love to dive in deeper about what that means in comparison with just chatbot. I mean, you mentioned ChatGPT a couple of times. We all know chatbots. But tell me what the difference is.
Right. So there are, hundreds or thousands of different chatbots out there, and none of them have a brain. They actually are all, like Siri and Alexa, and I'll talk about ChatGPT in a moment, but before ChatGPT, basically you have Siri and Alexa and chatbots that your bank may have, or your insurance company, or whatever, and they're actually extremely primitive. They consist of two parts. The first part is an intent identifier. So it's usually a neural network that's been designed. So if you say blah, 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 weather, then it's you want to know the weather, and if you say, I hate Uber, don't ever give me Uber again, it'll probably still trigger the Uber app because it picked up on the word Uber.
Yeah.
And then it'll ask, and then it goes into some little like flowchart program where it says, well, where do you want to go? How many people are going, and do you want Uber X? It's just, and if there's anything else that you want that wasn't pre-designed, that's why we get so frustrated with using chatbots. Right. They don't remember what you said earlier in the conversation. They don't reason and so on. So by us having a brain behind the scenes that really manages the conversation, you have long-term memory. It even remembers prior conversations that you've had, so if you call up your cable company and, the first thing they might say, okay, reboot your router, or your modem or whatever. Now, AIGO will remember that. So next time you call in, it's not going to ask you to, it might say, did that work, or, it might say, well, try moving your router into the kitchen. You might get better reception. So when you call back, they say, did moving it to the kitchen help, So wow. It remembers what I said earlier in a conversation, it uses context and it reasons about things. So that's, by having a brain, you have a much, much more capable conversation. So it's really chalk and cheese, that the two approaches, as I say, what Siri and Alexa and commercial chatbots, they don't have a brain. They just have this flowchart program. Now, ChatGPT is different. It with the trillion words that it's been trained on, it can actually have conversation, a very, very impressive conversation. But the problems that I mentioned earlier is it just confabulates, it makes up stuff. So you can't trust it. So for, in any commercial setting, an enterprise setting or so, you simply can't, that's not acceptable. I mean, it may
Yeah,
be
you can't rely on it.
yeah, I mean, it may be acceptable for frequently asked questions, maybe, if you can constrain it a bit. But anything that's mission critical, your legal team, your marketing team, your QA team are not going to sign off on something that could just go off at a tangent and, say whatever. So ChatGPT is very, very good for giving you a draft, doing summaries or giving you a draft or giving you ideas, brainstorming, or even coding examples. I mean, there's so many things that it's really amazingly good at, but you always have to have a human in the loop to say, well, is this really true? Does this really work? It can very confidently give you a piece of, computer code, computer program, which doesn't work. But a lot of times it'll point you in the right direction or give you something that does work. But, so it really can't be used for robust enterprise applications.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So, with your development and your initiative and trajectory in your business, where do you see it all going? And how should business leaders respond to that and prepare for that?
Things are moving really fast now. And our own development path is, we've actually just started an initiative because of the success and the availability of these large language models like ChatGPT to see how we can accelerate our own development. How can we leverage the knowledge that's encapsulated in these large language models, but to use it in a way that's robust, to do basically we're working on automated quality assurance on how we can use that to accelerate our own development, to increase the IQ of our system and the knowledge base of our system, which you'll then have the best of both worlds. You'll have a system that has a broad range of knowledge, but also is robust and scrutable. You can see, you can understand exactly why it's giving you the answer it's giving you, and you can be confident about it. So that's our own trajectory now. In terms of really anybody in business today, you really shouldn't be sticking your head in the sand. This is going to affect everyone, and I think the best is to try to embrace the technology. To use it, to become aware of what it can do, what it can't do. And as I say, it's moving very, very fast. So I think it's really important for people to keep up to date with the technology, but also to be sober about what it can and can't do. There's a lot of hype. There are billions of dollars being thrown at new startups to use this technology. And clearly a lot of them are going to make outrageous claims about what their product can do, and not to get sucked into that. So, one needs to be really careful about assessing what it can really do. Like years ago, we heard, IBM with their cognitive computing with Watson, they said, within 2 years, it'll replace all radiologists and doctors and so on. And, it didn't, it was pure marketing hype, and, unfortunately there's a lot of money going around, so you're going to have a lot of marketing hype. So it's, just use common sense and actually, try it and validate things. But it's moving fast, and you have to embrace it. Otherwise you're just going to be left behind, where appropriate.
No, that's great. So when you think about ChatGPT and all of these other innovations that have come about, where does AIGO fit in the mix there? And what should businesses be considering when they're thinking about what you're developing?
Well, yeah, as I say, it's quite simple. If you want robust conversational AI, these statistical systems, these large language models, just can't provide that. It's really as simple as that. And
Love it.
because of the lack of reliability and the various things that I've mentioned. And this is where a cognitive approach, and I see eventually over years, people working with these large language models will start to, change the designs to incorporate, to move towards cognitive models that really have high level thinking, that can learn interactively, that, can remember, robustly remember and think about things. So, right now, our approach, and the experience we have, for example, 1-800-Flowers and Harry and David are using our system for customer support, where, it remembers previous conversations, and it's very, very successful in those kinds of applications. So that's, where AIGO is right now. And as I say, we are very aggressively working on constantly improving it. We're still a long way from human level capabilities, but we are significantly above what can be done with traditional chatbots that don't have a brain.
Yeah, yeah.
So our task really is to move closer and closer to human level understanding, and having, broad range of common sense understanding.
That's great. Well, two more questions for you. I want to talk about ethics, and then I want to talk about what is the successful outcome of all of this. So first, ethics. This is obviously something that you've spent some time studying. I mean, when you're diving into just what does it mean to have intelligence, what does it mean to have that integrated into technology. So ethically speaking, what are some areas that business leaders should be considering? Like, just for some context, I know not even a few weeks ago, I mean, maybe it was within the past month or so, the USPTO has issued their perspective on copyright tied to anything developed through AI, saying, hey, look, if AI developed it, you cannot own the copyright. So, I mean, that's one thing. Then you have all of this this content that's just being created and regurgitated, and I mean, what do people do with that? How do people wrestle with the ethics of utilizing AI in their business and just in their day-to-day life?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that we don't have more people talking about ethics in a meaningful way. Really, there's the whole sort of community of AI risk, and that talk about ethics, and there are departments and companies that talk about ethics. And yet, if you ask people, okay, please define ethics for me, what does it mean? And where do you get it from? And it's usually just, kind of a blank. It's just, a number of concrete examples. Well, this is bad and that is, but often that's informed really more by their politics than anything else. So that's not terribly helpful. I've actually written quite a lot about ethics as well, and free will. Can we really choose? Can we be responsible, and so on? These articles are all on medium.com. It's easy to find. And ethics really, morality and ethics really should all be about human flourishing. And there are certain things that are essential for human flourishing, or that encourage human flourishing, promote it. And one of those things is honesty. And, it's not something that's actually valued very highly. If it was more valued, journalism would be a lot cleaner. People would automatically reject stuff that's wrong, but people tend to support false statements just because it's part of their tribe. If somebody in my tribe says something that's wrong, I'll accept that because they're in my tribe, and that's really unfortunate. It's really as basic to the individual, and it's the same for business leaders. So, for myself, I can only hope and recommend that more and more people will value quality in products and honesty in their interactions. I mean, that's I think one of the questions you had on your list was, what makes for a successful business? There are many things that can make a business financially successful, but the only thing that drives me and motivates me to run a business is to be proud of what I'm doing. To be proud of the product that I have and the interactions that I have with my customers. So I think that's kind of a long explanation about ethics, but you really have to start at the beginning. What is good for human flourishing? And, lies and cheating aren't good for human flourishing. And if more people had that attitude, the specifics of copyright, some of these things are really tricky. I mean, there are good arguments to be said that, once you publish something, why should you've given it to the public domain, but then there's a cost of, novel medication that could cost millions of dollars, should that be protected? Yeah. It's a complex situation. But the big thing is that, can we move humanity forward? Can we have more people flourishing? Can we eliminate poverty and war and destruction and, pollution and all of those things? And we can, if we just focus more on being productive and rational.
So what I'm hearing from you, which is super helpful, thank you for sharing all that. You believe that the successful outcome, or let me rephrase that. Do you believe that the successful outcome of this AI movement or AGI movement is going to be human flourishing? You don't see any pitfalls that could stop that?
It's very difficult to be sure, but I'm certainly in the camp of believing it's far more likely that AGI will be a tremendous benefit to us. And I think the risks that some people are talking about are largely overblown and misguided. I think they're based on, misconceptions
lack
and
of
so
knowledge.
on. So I believe it. Yeah, I believe it's very, very likely to be very beneficial, but it will be very disruptive. There's no doubt about it. And people who really are only comfortable with the status quo will struggle psychologically, even if they suddenly don't need to work anymore because everybody gets paid, universal basic income or something. It's still the change. If you've lived your whole life in a certain way and suddenly things change, it's sort of, be careful what you ask for. I mean, almost everybody would say, I'd love to win the lottery, and that's kind of where we're going to be as AI fully develops. And, a lot of people actually don't have a very happy life once they do win the lottery. So we'll need to become a lot better at people finding how to have purpose in their lives and have a fulfilled life if, for example, they don't have to work anymore. Now, this is looking, obviously further into the future when AI is fully developed. So but I just like to mention one other perspective in terms of AI risks. And that is, I'm also of the mind that it's very likely that we need AI to save ourselves from ourselves. We are not very good at managing this advanced civilization. I mean, if you look at politics across the world, the kind of people who end up being in positions of power, you see the corruption in many parts of the world. There are just so many areas in which humans don't seem to be really very, very capable of managing their own affairs. And I believe that AGI can actually substantially help us think these things through and come up with better solutions. It's like having a very wise person to advise you, but potentially everybody will have that and say, does it really make sense for us to be doing this? Or does it really make sense for us to be doing that? And so I think AGI will actually is almost necessary for us. So that's a perspective. Again, it's
Yeah.
very difficult to predict how everything will play out, but that's sort of another perspective.
I appreciate you going deep there, Peter. That that certainly is a successful outcome when we're thinking about, hey, giving people some tools on how to handle the world, and face the struggles that we all do. I would just ask, if there's any risk of elevating this AGI or AI to, I mean, do we really think that it can be better than humanity? I mean, humanity, we all have our different perspectives. I think we have,
Yes.
and I didn't know we were going to get into philosophy.
Yes.
I'm sure you didn't know that either, but here we are.
Oh, right.
This is really impactful. But I believe that outside of let me walk that back a little bit. I believe that humanity does struggle with doing good. I think that's one of the things that humanity does tend to fall into, is a propensity to doing bad. I think there are a lot of good people who try to do good, but I think inherently, just in our bones, we're selfish. Inherently in our bones, we're proud. I mean, I'm not sure where you fall, because I mean, we're talking about essentially religion here at this point in time. But I mean, on my end, I firmly believe that outside of the saving grace of Jesus and the work that he's done, there's really nothing good that can come out of humanity. Now, when we're talking about AGI and this evolution of AGI, I think there's a propensity to say, well, maybe that could be what helps us become better. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, do you think that AGI has the propensity to be a dare I say God, little g, God? I mean, is that something that you're considering?
I wouldn't like to use that word.
Yeah.
Omnipotent and
Sure.
no, I wouldn't use that. But I think you point to something very important, that we are maybe not inherently designed to do good things, and I would maybe disagree with that. I think we want to do good things, but we still have these animal instincts for survival and reproduction that drive a lot of things that are not rational. And this is where AGI can really help us to become more rational. As civilization has progressed, people have become more rational. We've got institutions of law and so on. I mean, life has definitely improved. And I see AGI helping us to do that even more.
Wow. No, that's great. I really appreciate you taking that tangent with me, Peter. It's a very big unknown world ahead of us when it comes to AGI. But I mean, when we're talking about just how do you run a good business, this has certainly been incredibly helpful. And Peter, I greatly respect your input and your advice today. So thank you so much. So just as we wrap up, how do people contact you? I know you mentioned that you've got some articles on Medium. Medium. You got a website. I mean, how can people connect with you? And what do you want them to do?
Yeah, they can certainly on our website, AIGO.ai, AIGO.ai. There are also actually links to those articles, but otherwise you can also find them just Peter Voss on medium.com. Also easy to find on Twitter, or you can just email me, peter@aigo.ai. So I'm always happy to exchange ideas with people, and as you'll have noticed, I love talking about these things and exploring them.
No, I love it. I love it. Well, thanks so much. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in this week. I know we went a little bit long, but man, I loved that conversation. We'll see you guys next week on Good Business. If you like this podcast, please subscribe now and share with friends, family, and other business leaders. You can learn more about each guest and the resources we discussed at podcast.clayvon.com. And if you're a business leader looking to market your business and share your story, check out my company, Good Agency, at www.goodagency.com. We'll see you next time on Good Business.